You're listening to Articulate with your hosts, Kevin Kramer and Sean Gillespie, your go-to guys for art tips, techniques, and general artist ramblings. Presented by drawingandcoloring.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to Articulate, the podcast where we talk about everything art.
Yeah, it's a true
and
story.
today's topic is going to be marketing yourself and getting your art out there, getting your brand, getting your name, and just getting yourself out there.
All right, and first we should actually say who you are and who I am. I'm Sean.
That's true.
Yeah, kind of glossed over that one today. And
that happens. I am Kevin Kramer.
Right.
This is my co-host, Sean Gillespie, as always.
Right.
And today's podcast, as I said, is going to be all about art marketing and getting your name out there.
Yeah. So let's
Where do you go? Where do you put your name?
Yeah.
And, how do you get it done?
Right. So in my mind, as we were talking about this, it kind of divides into two areas. You getting your name out locally, and then getting your name out, in the world. Yeah, and unlocally and digitally and things like that. So let's start with locally there, Kevin. So what are some good ways you can get your name out locally?
Well, there's a few different places you can go to. As when you're first starting out, the obvious places, you want to maybe hit up those coffee shops,
Right.
bars, restaurants.
Restaurants, yeah.
All of those. And most people, if you're an artist, you probably worked in a restaurant at one place or another, so you probably already have a few ins.
Right.
So those are always good places to start with
Yeah.
getting anything on a wall.
And
If
some of the
it's one
smaller
piece-
galleries, too. Pretty much any town is going to have a lot of small galleries, and they're used to being approached and, you going in and talking to them. It helps if you have, definitely you want to have a portfolio, but a lot of times the owner's not going to be there at the same time you drop by and things like that. So it helps to have just
Right.
little cards, almost like postcard size of your work, and you can just give it to
something
them.
with an example.
Yeah,
of
just
your work
examples.
on
Say,
it.
hey, here's some examples of my work, and it has your contact information on the back, and you say, if you're interested, contact me. I could definitely, I'd like to have, an art. And a lot of, in Austin especially, which is where we're from, there's a lot of places
Right.
that have a rotating, roulette of
exactly.
artists that
you
come
can always
through.
just walk into the coffee shops and ask them,
Yeah.
who do I need to speak to get on the wall?
Right. How do I become one of these guys? And that's a
It
great
could
way
be
to get
as simple
your name.
as that, really,
Right.
in most places.
Right.
Especially in local, smaller areas, they're always looking for those, new artists around town or something
absolutely.
that they can just get up on the walls.
Yeah, small businesses and local businesses especially want to support other local artists and local business. So, you're obviously not going to be able to walk into Chili's or someplace like that, but with these
don't
big
wanna hit
chain
up
places,
those.
because they've got a set, dynamic that they've got to meet, an aesthetic that they've got to meet. But local businesses are going to be your
Avoid
key.
franchises.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
Safe to say.
Exactly. And the important thing to remember too is, just getting your art in there isn't enough. You need to have like a card on each piece or something
Right.
like that, because if you just have a painting up there and nobody knows who you are, it's not going to do you any good.
Well, the way I see it is that is just the first step. Those are almost if you actually get your artwork into one of those restaurants or bars. I know a friend in Seattle who had his work in there, and it was like a bar restaurant type of deal. It was a pretty sweet area, but even then, the way I see that is just it's an opening, but that is just a big business card basically for you. That just hangs around on the walls. So
Right.
I wouldn't just hang your hat on that and let that make everything come in. 'cause
No,
that's
you
not
can't
gonna
stop
work.
there. It's also, we were saying very important to get an online presence. But before we get into that, I just want to also mention that another, arts and crafts festivals are a great way to get your name out there. You can rent a tent and all that. You need to make sure you have enough work to actually, fill
you
a
don't
tent, because you don't want to be
spend
just sitting there with one
$400 and
painting.
you got two pieces
But
of it.
yeah, that's a great way, because the people who go there are people looking for art, first off, so they're already your audience, and second off, you get a lot of galleries and things looking for new artists, which even if they're not there to buy or that day, they might get your information for later. So that's another good.
Definitely. Yeah, it's more about just getting your name and work in as many locations as possible. So you have just as much exposure as you possibly can.
And to the right people too, because you don't want to if you're wanting your work to sell and to get, go to galleries, if that's your next step, then, it may not be that the shady bar at the end of the street's going to do it for you. You need to think about location and think about, well, where would the people that I'm trying to reach and would try to buy this art, what type of place would they go to? And, kind of know your audience.
Yeah, definitely. You definitely want to know who the people are that are buying your artwork.
Right.
Otherwise, you don't want to go to the bar down the street because that's not going to. Nobody's going to look at it. Nobody's going to appreciate it anyway.
Right. Absolutely.
Might get a lot of traffic, but then people just look at that.
Right.
And it never gets off the walls.
Absolutely.
So you definitely want to know who the audience is that you're selling your artwork to, for sure.
And it helps to have your webpage already set up so that you can refer them to your webpage so they can see other artwork if they like your work. So,
and that gets into that kind of segues into that digital realm too.
Exactly.
Perfectly
There we go. See how I did that? Segue.
Yeah, that's nice.
Nice.
But
seamless.
Yeah, if the way I see it is you have to have art is local and you want to have it in there. But to really expand and get your name into more people's heads and talking about you need to be online.
Yeah, definitely need to have a web page for sure. And I would say start with the web page even before, because what's going to happen is, if a local business or anybody is approached by two artists and one has a web page and one doesn't, they're more likely to go with the guy that has a web page because they can go there, they can look at 100 images versus the 2 images that the other person showed, and
it lets them learn more about you.
Yeah, and we're still in this age too where having a web page all of a sudden makes you, even though anybody can have a web page, it makes you credible. Yeah, it's like, oh, this person's the real deal because they have a web page. And even though anybody can do it, we're still, in that mentality. Like, okay, this person is serious. So
you can get a professional website up for less than $100 with all of your stuff on it.
Well, you're talking about you're hiring somebody to do it, because it's usually a bit more than that if you hire somebody. But you're just talking about buying like a template.
These days, if you buy a template and you just get some cheap web hosting, it's less than $100.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you just have that maintenance for the hosting.
Right.
So
and
it's really easy to look legit these days.
Yeah, definitely. No excuse not to these days.
No. If there's no excuse not to have a website with your information on it.
And plus, if you think about it too, having a web page, you're going to get even more than a lot of museums get traffic-wise. You're going to have way more hits than anybody's going to see in any restaurant or any gallery or anything like that, because you've got worldwide audience then too.
Yeah, and that really opens up to the global economy, and you can a lot of the people that watch this podcast, a lot of people that go to my websites, they're in India. No. There's no way I'd be able to get there.
Kevin's very popular with the Indians.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's the time of day I post or something, but it's the other side of the world is where a lot of my traffic comes from. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of, you have to keep that in. There's all this, maybe you don't have your market in your specific neighborhood of, maybe you're so avant-garde that nobody understands it, but in another world away, everybody loves you.
Yeah, you find your audience. Yeah, your audience will find you in that way. But you also need to get your name out online too. So posting slideshows on YouTube, which I hate those, but you can do it. Things like that to get your work out there.
It's really, all of those things are kind of just, the faster and easier you can figure out how to get them done, the quality of it isn't necessarily what matters. As long as you can get your artwork out there.
Are you talking about the quality of the artwork, or are you talking about the quality of the site?
Oh, no. I'm talking about the quality. You have to have good quality work.
Okay. All right. Just want to clarify there. I was like, wait a second.
Stick figures and make sure it's going to be selling for hundreds of dollars.
Right. Which actually, brings us to a good point here. Oh. Pricing your work.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, that's a good one.
Yeah. So you've got this traffic. You've got this, the owner of a restaurant or whatever says, yeah, you can show your work. And now you've got to price it, Right. And this is another thing where it's helpful to know your audience. Is it a very fancy restaurant? And then maybe you can have your price a little higher than if it's not. But you also want to have one thing you want to make sure is to not let your emotions get involved, because I know I've done some paintings that I liked way better than other paintings. I'm like, this one's worth $1 million, and
Yeah, exactly.
and so you don't want to price based on that. You need to really make sure that your artwork has a consistent price range and all
Right.
that, because you don't, if somebody sees a painting that looks just like another painting and one's $300 and one's $1,000, they're gonna wonder, and they're gonna just
What's the
think that
difference?
maybe you're not a professional, maybe you're just picking numbers
Right.
out of a hat and things like that.
Exactly.
So you definitely,
and that is kind of what a lot of artists do.
yeah, a lot
Because,
do.
I mean, there's no set formula, and then
Right.
you kind of have to ball up and put all these different numbers, and how do I kind of calculate that?
Well, as you go on and you negotiate and you find out what people can, will pay or whatever, you can start pricing based on your past work. And a lot of times, especially when you're, submitting to art galleries, they'll want to see examples of prices that have sold for your past work so that they can kind of judge how much to price your work for.
Right.
But when you're starting out, if you don't have a history of, sales invoices and sales receipts to prove that you're a selling artist, then it's helpful to start based on labor, price based on labor. So it's like, well, I'm going to try, I want to get about $15 an hour. This piece took me 20 hours, and you can roughly figure out a price that way.
Right.
So
that's a good one.
to
That's
start.
definitely one I've used before. I mean, if you just take your current job, how much do I make an hour? I want to make at least that
Right.
with this.
Right.
So exactly what you said. How many hours did I work on it?
Right.
I work 20 hours and I make $15 an hour or $10 an hour, whatever it is.
Right. And how you're priced kind of goes into how you're marketing yourself. If you price yourself too low, people will see you as, maybe a beginning artist or an unprofessional, or, they may not have, amateur. They may not have, if you price too high, they may think, well, that guy thinks way more of himself than it is. So you want to be at just that right price range.
Well, if you can kind of create that, like we said in a previous podcast, you want to kind of create that mystique around yourself. So if you can get a higher price, nobody's going to say,
Yeah,
nobody's
but be
gonna tell you
consistent.
you're
So
worth this
price
much.
everything.
You're going to have to kind of pick that.
Yeah.
But art world's a little finicky with stuff like that just because it is all subjective.
Yeah, it helps to go to galleries and compare prices too. Try to find an artist who's making work similar to yours and see how they're pricing their work. I've definitely been in restaurants and I'm like, man, I can't believe they're trying to charge that much. But then a lot of times, it doesn't have a sold sign on it either. So that's something to consider too.
That's when it comes an expensive business card.
Yeah, exactly.
So that kind of goes into again, just getting it out there to the right people. That is going to bring you some money, and then you can kind of start to build up your prices. The more you sell.
Yeah, as your name gets out there,
you can get it out there.
Yeah.
The more people you can get it out there to in the coffee shops, online, the more your prices will go up because you'll have all those other value of people coming in. So you'll feel better. You can raise your prices.
And supply and demand. If you're every time you paint and it moves out, then raise the price.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And you can say, whatever it is, you make one big sale, you can even put that in your marketing. Yeah,
the key is you don't want to just willy-nilly pick a price. You want to be able to, back it up. You need to, so.
Definitely. You want to be able to back up your pricing on some level.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, if you can come up with some kind of formula, that would be the best way.
Yeah.
So, what do we have here? You want to first start out locally.
I recommend starting with a web page.
You want to start off with a web page.
Right. Because that's going to be your online presence and your online portfolio, because most people don't show up with a printed portfolio these days.
Right. And that's super expensive. So if anything else, just to get everything online for less than $100, and you can get someone to take pictures cheap too, or you can take them with a digital camera. You want to make sure they're lit quality.
Yeah,
though.
you want good pictures.
You want to have good representation of your work if you have a website.
Absolutely.
So start with the web page. Make sure you have some kind of presence online. You even want to if one way to even build up your audience is with just basic marketing techniques is to, anytime someone comes to your website, you want to be able to capture their email or some kind of contact information so you can build your art list. That's what all of the art galleries and all these other people do. They build all their gallery lists, and then anytime they have a show or an exhibit, they email them, send out flyers or whatever else, and then they get the instant traffic to the galleries to get the prices sold.
All right.
Or get the art sold. So if you can kind of digitally do that, and then you can just build up your list of people. Anytime you make new work, send them an email, and then you can have prints for sale online or gallery or anything like that, and then you have instant sales. So you want to be online, but you can have it on locally too, but you want to make sure you have some kind of online presence.
Yeah, absolutely. And then when you do go locally, and like I say, just bring a little card so that, you know, they have your information and they can see some of your work right then on the spot to establish interest too. And then
definitely. And then they can go online and get more.
Right. Absolutely.
And see a whole breadth of your work.
And then your name is out there. And that's marketing yourself.
There, floating around. Market. And then, well, maybe if we have another podcast or something, we can have another kind of how to make some more business choices on what to do with your art. That'd be a good way to do it too.
Yeah, which is a good point. You know, email us your suggestions or, you know, anything you want us to do a podcast on. Just shoot us an email. I believe our email is now info@articulatepodcast.com. We also have suggestions at articulatepodcast.com.
So send them in. We want to know what you want to hear, what you're thinking. What do you think about this podcast? Or, you know, or if we just a bunch of buffoons talking about art.
Right. Did we miss something? Let us know.
Yeah. I will have one good reference that a lot of these things that I've been talking about are from is The Artist's Guide. It's a really good book. You can actually find it on the articulate.com website under the resources or recommended readings. Highly recommend that book. It covers pretty much how to do everything that we just talked about in a very step-by-step practical way too. So if you want to check that book out, I would highly recommend that one.
Sounds good.
All right. So any last words?
No, thanks guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see y'all next time.
All right. Signing out.
You've been listening to Articulate with Kevin and Sean. Subscribe on iTunes or check them out on drawingandcoloring.com. Always reminding you to keep it simple.